Viola, and she's going to tell us a little bit of the interesting facts that happened in her life. Okay, Hazel, what do you remember about your birth and your youth?
Not too much. The main thing was going to Delgado School, and when we got to the 7th grade, I had to transfer from Delgado to Towston. And I had to walk all that way, and it was a long way, there and back. But during that time, we worked on Saturdays in the dime stores around Crescents, and I think the other one was Greens, if I'm not mistaken. But we made $1.50 a day, and we went to work at 8 o'clock and worked until everybody was out of the store, usually about 10:30 on Saturday nights. We made all of $1.50. But it helped out a whole lot and gave us some change. And we went on to school, and I quit in the 11th grade. And then I went to work for Block's Shirt Factory and worked with them over on Hanover Street until they got burned out, and we had to move then over on Greenfield Street. And I worked there about 11 and a half years. And then it was just the beginning of the war. Things were getting kind of tight and hard to do. And so in 1940, I left Wilmington and went to Alexandria, Virginia, and stayed with Linwood, my husband's aunts that lived in Alexandria. And I worked in Washington in laundry pickup stations and stayed there. And then I found out that the government was looking for somebody like me to work in a place. And so I got all the papers that I needed and filled them out and sent them in, and then that was along like November, December of 1940. And I got a notice back on, I think it was sometime in March of 41. I got the papers to fill out for this federal prison industries in West Virginia. And so it took about 2 months, I guess, something like that. And I was called for an interview in Washington, and I did that, and then I was told to go to Alderson, West Virginia, and which I did. Left Washington on Sunday and got to West Virginia Sunday night, about 7:30, I guess it was. And it was quite a change because I had never worked with prisoners or anything like that. And, I can't begin to tell you how it was. But anyway, another girl was hired at the same time, and we were sent to Alderson to train where they're going to open up a new place in Seagoville, Texas. And so we trained, and I got to Alderson in March, and we trained there until September, 1st of September, Labor Day. We 2 carloads of us drove from Alderson, West Virginia to Dallas, Texas. And then we went on the following Monday to Seagoville. And it's all new building and new machines and new people, and it was quite exciting. And we worked there until I guess it was first part of 42 when the war broke out, and then they transferred all of the prisoners. Well, the ones that had a short time on their sentences, they were pardoned and let go home. But what they call the long-termers, they were transferred up to Alderson. And we had, it was in April, about April the 15th, that I went on back up to Alderson, West Virginia, and worked there all through the war, and it was about the middle part of 1945, and Linwood, my husband, had been in the service all during the war up in Quonset, up in Connecticut, and he would come down to Alderson once or twice. He wasn't allowed to come that far, but he did a couple of times. And so I would meet him in New York, and during that time I got the idea of, I knew that Manhattan Shirt Company was a pretty big shirt company, and I was getting kind of tired staying in Alderson because it was not a whole lot to do around there. It was a very small place and kind of hidden away. And so one time when I went to New York to meet Linwood, I got the idea to write to Manhattan Shirts and see if they wanted to hire me, which I did, and I got a letter back. And the funny part about it was that I didn't know the address in New York of Manhattan, and I wrote the letter to Penn Station, or about 34th Street, New York City. And I got a letter back in about a week or two from Paterson, New Jersey. Couldn't believe it. And so anyway, I went in for an interview one Saturday when I was up there. And so he hired me, and I went on back to Alderson and worked a month to work out my leave. And so then I moved up to Paterson, New Jersey, and worked for Manhattan Shirt Company. There I worked with the engineering department and traveled quite a bit from one place to another, different. Sometimes they were making pajamas and shirts in different places, and I'd go. I first went up to Norwalk, Virginia, and worked a week up there. Not in New York, I mean Connecticut. Virginia was Connecticut. Norwalk, Connecticut. I worked a week there, and then went back to Paterson. And then they wanted me to go down to Americus, Georgia, and I went down there and stayed. It was about 6 weeks on that tour. And when I got through there, I went on back to Paterson and went to Salisbury, Maryland, and the last time I went to Scranton, Pennsylvania, and we were there about 16 weeks. They opened up a new plant to make men's walking shorts. They were right new at that time. They weren't plentiful and worn like they are now. And so then my friends in West Virginia we had talked lots and lots about opening up a factory of our own. And so we had a hard time getting machines, and fabrics and stuff to operate the machine at the factory, but we finally got started and we made some jackets that were Eisenhower type jackets, and we made quite a few of those and sold them too. And then I don't remember now how many girls we had working, but we had several girls working. But it was, we didn't have enough, excuse me, we didn't have enough experience to actually do that project. It didn't work too well. And I don't remember how long it was, about a year and a half, something like that. And we decided that it wasn't going to go, so we just stopped working with that. But it was a lot of experience, and the friend that I worked with there and myself, we had the sewing experience, but we had to train one of the other girls to do our cutting, and she did a good job. But we just couldn't get it going, so we decided just to quit. It was after the war, and materials and things were very difficult to come by. They were still short-handed from the war. And so then I decided that my marriage to Linwood had deteriorated quite a bit, and I decided that I was going to go to, I had met these friends from California, from LA, and they had invited me to come out there and see what I could do out there, and so I went out there, and I went to work at a blouse factory there in LA, and that was just really a bad situation. And I only lasted there about 2 weeks. I had to quit that. But there was another place there that I went and made application, and that they hired me, but they were on vacation themselves. And everybody went on vacation, and then everybody came back and went to work. And it had about a month. So during that time, I thought, well, I'm going to go to Las Vegas and get a divorce. So I did that. I went to Las Vegas and stayed there 6 weeks and got my divorce. And in the meantime, my brother and sister-in-law's little girl, my niece, had contracted polio and died. And so I don't know, I just had a real bad feeling about the whole thing. I didn't know anything about that until later, but I kept wondering and thinking, so I sent a wire, because they didn't know where I was, and I sent a wire to my sister-in-law, Mildred, and Charlie, my brother, and they told me to come home. Didn't tell me why or anything else. So I went, and they were, Charlie was working for King & Meat Packing Company, and they were having a sales meeting in Richmond, Virginia. So I met them in Richmond and went on back home with them. And I stayed with, and what Mildred was working for. They had opened up a new plant in can't think of the name of the little town right now. But anyway, Mildred was all in real bad shape due to the death of Charlene. And so I worked with her there until about a month. And then I met Earl Donahoe. Well, I had already met him, but we decided we were going to get married, and so I left Virginia, I mean North Carolina did, little town, and eventually ended up in Dallas, Texas again. And we worked, Earl and I worked, we had our own business. He was a salesman, and we'd get material in 4-yard lengths and package it up and sell it in general merchandise stores, all little towns all out through Texas and some in New Mexico. And we were on the road constantly for about five and a half years, and he got sick and passed away. And after that, of course, I couldn't go back on the road by myself, so I had to close down that part of the business. Then I got a job in an office of Herring Transportation Company, and worked there for about a year, I guess it was, something like that. I decided I needed to get with a bigger company so that they would have better benefits. And I had a friend that worked for Gulf Oil Corporation in Houston, and so I went to work for Gulf Oil Corporation. Had to take a big cut in salary in order to get in, but that was all right. And on the side, excuse me, I find that I've forgotten some of my experiences with Manhattan. And when I was first hired to work, they sent me to a small town called Middletown, New York, and I worked with some girls there, and we were retraining girls there that in different operations that they had kind of gotten out of the right way to do things. And then I went to Americus, Georgia, and did the same thing there. But the fact is, that's what I did most of the time. But then they had me come into the main office in Patterson, New Jersey. Clip bow ties had just come in at that time, and so they wanted me to set the time and motion on a clip bow tie. And that was really something, because I've been working with real heavy materials, even some wool materials for army shirts, and went on this silk, 100% silk on the bias, and to make a clip bow tie, and I really had to do some adjusting, and different machines too that I hadn't worked with. But it took about 6 weeks, I guess it was, to get that job finished. And that's about all I can remember about Manhattan. And I resigned there and went down to Huntington, West Virginia, to work on the blouse factory that we had started, but I hadn't worked with it. My partners were Mary and Beamer Donahoe, and Irene and Eric Donahoe, and myself. And we worked, and we really didn't know too much about organization and that sort of thing. And it was very difficult to get all the machines that you needed, because the war had just ended and there was just a shortage of everything. and materials were hard to get. And finally, we just disbanded that operation. But we still remain friends even till now. And the fact is, there's only one left now. Mary Donahoe is still living, but Beamer's gone, and Eric and Irene are gone. So after that, I went out to California to L.A. I had a friend out there that had invited me to come out there. So I went out there, and I got a job out there, but the company that I was to work with was on vacation, and they were to be gone for a month. And then everybody went on vacation, they closed down, and then everybody came back and went to work. So I thought, well, in the meantime, I wasn't doing anything, so I decided I was going to go over to Las Vegas and get my divorce. I decided I was going to get a divorce. And that's what I did. I stayed in Las Vegas 6 weeks. And in the meantime, after I got my divorce, I went back to L.A., but then I heard from Charlie and Mildred that Charlene had died. I didn't know at the time that when they told me to come home, I didn't know that Charlene was gone. They didn't tell me that, they just said, come home. So then I got everything together and came back I met them in Richmond, Virginia. Charlie was working for King and Meat Packing Company, and they were having a sales meeting which lasted about a week there in Richmond. So Mildred and myself, we visited, and we were like sisters and still are, as far as that's concerned. And I went on, Mildred was working in a branch plant for a block shirt factory. And so one of her girls had resigned, and so I went in and worked with her for 2 or 3 months. I don't remember how long now. But anyway, during all this time, I met Earl Donahoe back in Alderson, and we were real good friends. And so we decided, well, we'd get everything straightened out and we'd get married. So we did that. And so I left Mildred and went on back, and we traveled back to Texas. Earl had never been to Texas, and of course I had worked down there for the prison industries and liked it very much. And so we went back. Earl and I went to Dallas first, but we didn't stay in Dallas too long. We went on down to Houston because we had gotten some materials that we could get in Houston, and we could buy it in 4-yard lengths. And we traveled all through Texas and part of New Mexico. They're selling these materials. We could pack them up in packages, and we could work with general merchandise stores and in small towns because they couldn't carry a variety of materials and colors and prints and that sort of thing. And we did real well with it, but Earl got sick, and we had to go back to Houston because he was really sick and passed away shortly after that time. And so after that time, I knew I was going to have to go to work. So I had these friends that knew, they worked with these shipping vans and that you see on the road even now. And it was called Herring Transportation Company. And I worked with them for about a year, close to a year, I guess it was. And I decided that I'd better get with a large company that had benefits and things of that sort. And I had a friend in Houston that worked for Gulf Oil Corporation. And so I talked to her. She got me an interview with the personnel department at Gulf Oil. And I got a job, and I took it, but it was a big cut in pay to start with. So I had to get me a weekend job and nights and things like that. So at first there was a couple there that run a babysitting incorporated. And so I'd babysit at night and work for Gulf Oil in the daytime. And that went on for quite a while, but there was a young man working at Gulf Oil that also worked at a drive-in theater there, and he was an assistant manager. And I knew about this, so I saw him in the hall there one day, and I asked him if they didn't need somebody to work out at the drive-in theater. And he said, well, let him see about it. And so he came back and asked me if I wanted to be a cashier at the drive-in theater. So I went to work there, and that supplemented my salary at Gulf Oil. But I worked at the drive-in theater for years, a long time, and at Gulf Oil too. And the drive-in theater paid all my incidentals that I needed to on the side. But my job at Gulf Oil, it got better all the time. And I'd get raises here and there, and that part worked out real good. And that is, I worked at the show about, close to 15 years, and I worked at Gulf Oil for 20 years and 8 months and retired. And when I retired, I just came on back to Wilmington, North Carolina. And of course, with retirement, you don't go out looking for jobs and things like that, which worked out real good. And I bought a mobile home eventually, and it was real nice. I liked it and enjoyed living in it. And Ronnie and Dale were living in Hampstead, and he got after us to move down here. I have this property out here with the water, and such a beautiful place. So we moved down here to Hampstead, and then we were here, I guess, couple of years. And in 1996, we had a hurricane called Fran. And Fran wiped us out. It took everything. And so then we were in Columbia with Jim and Rita, and Rita found out that I was reading the paper one Sunday there. We were still in Columbia right after the hurricane. And she found out about this man and his wife that had an RV. Excuse me. So we went out and looked at it and fell in love with it and bought it. And that's what we're doing now. We'd had another hurricane right recently, Bonnie, and they came down, and Dean came down with a truck, and his friend and stepdaughter, they brought a wrecker down in a car, and Dean's wife drove her Jeep down here, and we hooked up the two RVs and a golf cart and a boat, and headed back for Winston-Salem, where Dean worked. Dean and Carol work and live. And but the hurricane wasn't too bad. But anyway, we were safe and had no problems with that. And then later, about a little over a week later, we all came back to Hampstead. And so far, things are calm and beautiful and nice. And that's all I can remember.
Hazel, we'd like to hear about how you joined the church and some of the things that you did after you joined the church, like working in the temple and so forth.
Well, it was Christmas. I think it was about 1976 that Jim and Rita had been living and working in Hong Kong, and they came home for Christmas, and they invited me to go back to Hong Kong with them and stay a while, because they were only going to be there about 6 months or so. They'd be finishing up their job. And of course I wanted to go, but I couldn't go because I didn't have a passport. So I promised that I'd do all the necessaries and go later, which I did. I had got my passport on February the 9th, I think it was. I left Wilmington February the 9th of 1996.
76.
76, not 96, 76. And Rita had sent me an itinerary, and she'd gotten my ticket in Hong Kong because it was cheaper. And so I left Wilmington and went to San Francisco to catch a plane in San Francisco to go, and went to Hawaii. And I spent a couple of nights in Hawaii and days, and went around, went out to Pearl Harbor, and went out to the pineapple fields and all, and it was all very interesting. Then I left there and went to Manila and spent overnight in Manila, and lo and behold, we had an earthquake. It didn't do too much harm or damage, but it was sure scary. I was in a hotel there, and it was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I went to my room, and all of a sudden, everything got to moving around, and it was so peculiar, and the lamps were moving around, and I thought, well, I'm so dizzy, I don't know why. And come to find out, I heard some people talking real loud out in the hall, and we were having an earthquake. And then that's why everything was moving around so. We had to walk down 9 floors, to the main floor, and it just kind of shook things up a little bit. And then that evening when I went to dinner, went to the restaurant there in the hotel, and it shook us again. That was really an experience. And then I left the next morning and went on to Hong Kong. And I arrived in Hong Kong on February the 14th, 1976. And Rita and Jim and Debbie and Pat met me at the airport. And from then on, we really had a good time. And so while I was there, I think it was in May. Of course, we've been going to church every Sunday, and all the people there were so interesting because they were from all parts of the universe working there. Everybody was a very special person to be there, and it was mostly interesting and fun too. Rita and I go shopping, and of course we went to church every Sunday, and they of course belonged to the Mormon church, and I went along too. And then I decided one Sunday that I'd go ahead and join the church. But Rita had gone someplace on an errand or something, and Jim and Debbie and Pat and myself were still at home. And I decided I was going to go ahead and join the church. No use me going and not be a member. And so I told Jim, and we were to go to some of their friends that evening, Sunday evening, for dinner and just friendly get together. And two of the missionaries were there, and he told them about it. So they came over, started giving me the lessons and everything. And we had a lot of fun. They were nice girls. And I was baptized. I can't remember the exact date now, but it must have been like May or something of that year. And I was baptized there in Hong Kong. And that was really a wonderful thing that happened. And everybody there was so nice, and there were so many people there at the church after the baptism and all. And then we left Hong Kong, I think it was in the early part of July, and we came back. First we spent the night in Bangkok and visited some of the temples and things there, and they had a big park there. I think it was called Rose Park. They had so many roses there, and they had a great big elephant that they had a chair fixed up on his back, and Debbie wanted to ride the elephant, and nobody to ride with her, so I went up there, and Debbie and I went and rode the elephant. And that certainly was an uncomfortable ride. Every step he'd take, the seat would tip over one side, and then the next step it'd be on the other side, and we were glad to get off, I tell you. And then after Bangkok, we went to New Delhi, and Jim and Rita got a man just drive us any place that we wanted to go, because we didn't have time to try to find these places for ourselves. And one Sunday, we drove out to the Taj Mahal, and that is a most gorgeous place. And then we came back and visited Mahatma Gandhi's tomb, which was very special. It was a special feeling there. And we went to several temples around, and then from New Delhi we split up, and Jim and Rita and Debbie and Pat went to
Egypt.
Egypt, and I can't remember the place.
Cairo.
Huh?
Cairo.
Went to Cairo. Why I can't remember that. And I went on to Rome because they had been to Rome and I hadn't, and I wanted to see Rome. So I had, I guess, about 3 days in Rome, and they came on back to London. We were going to come back to the States from London, and I left Rome and met them in London, and we came across to New York from there. But I saw quite a bit in Rome. I went to the Acropolis there, and I was real disappointed that they hadn't tried to keep it up. It was more or less in ruins, but it was special. And then I went to some of the other sightseeing places. I saw where the Christians buried the people there in Rome, and that was very interesting. And then I left early on Sunday morning and met Jim and Rita in London there, and then we came on across to New York and then home from there. But Rita wants me to tell of a dream that I had there that I still don't know, don't understand too much about it, but I was in a great big room, and it was a large room, and I was expecting some company or some people or something, but the room was all in a special shade of blue, and the walls and the carpet and it had wide steps, and it was high up. It was like on the second, at least on the second floor, and the ceiling in this big room that I was in had carving. The whole ceiling looked like it was about 2-inch deep carving all over the ceiling, and the bottom part of it was this same shade of blue, but the other part was, the inside part was white. And I went on to see why the people I was expecting to come, why they weren't there. And I looked down these steps, and they were really wide steps, and it was still, everything was this blue, and I could see mostly the top of the heads of the people, and they never did come up the steps, but they were down around the bottom of the steps. And I don't know why, I've never known why I did that, but it was interesting, and it's still a puzzle to me why that particular dream. But after we got home and got settled down, of course I kept up with the church here in Wilmington, and we go to church, and then they opened up had an open house at the temple in Washington, and Val and Victor invited me to go along with them, and we did, and I saw these sisters inside the temple. And by the way, that temple is the most gorgeous building I think I ever saw. And anyway, back to the sisters, they were all in white and standing so beautiful all over the place, on all the floors that we went through. And I said, well, that's what I'd like to do. And Viola says, you can't. You're not a member yet. That's before I went to Hong Kong. And so after we got back, we went on to the temple after that. And I got my own endowment. And Jim and Rita were there. Jim was proxy for Earl, and we got his work done. And I asked one of the sisters there, how in the world did you get to work in the temple? And she told me to go home and talk to my bishop. And I did. As soon as I got home, I went to my bishop and talked to him. And so he sent my name in, and our stake president was, I can't think of his name right now, I know it. Anyway, he called me one evening and he said, I've got your name here to work in the temple. And I said, yes. He says, most unusual. I couldn't understand what in the world he was talking about then. I know now what he was talking about, because most people going to work in the temple have years of experience in being a Mormon. And here I was a brand new one. But he sent my name in, and I don't know how long it was before I heard from him, but one evening, one of the people, the men that was in charge of the temple there, called me and said he had my name to come to work up there. And so I said yes, and it was, I guess close to a month before I could go. I had some things I had to do at home, and so I went up to Washington and worked in the temple there for about 3 years, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I'd like to go back and work now, but I can't. I guess that's about all I know about what I've done.
Well, you were telling me a story about the first time you got your hair cut. That's a real cute story. I thought maybe you'd like to share that with us.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I was about 16 years old, and I was working in a dime store downtown, Cress's, and this girl, a real good friend, and she and I'd have lunch together every day. I was working at Cress's, and my dad or my mother, either one, would never let me have my hair cut because it was curly, and I hated it. I did not like long hair. And so one day, my dad, he was a railroad conductor for Pullman Company, and I decided that I was going to get my hair cut. He was out of town, and we had an invite to a party that night. It was on Friday night, and so I went on my lunch hour. I sneaked away from my friend because I knew what she'd do, and so I went on. There was a barber shop. We didn't have beauty parlors at that time, and there was a barber shop right around the corner from the store. And I sneaked down there, and you had to go downstairs to even get it. And told that man I wanted a haircut. And he put me in the chair and got my hair all combed out. And I was sitting there, and in comes this friend. I don't know how in the world she found me, but here she come. And so she told me to get out of that chair, and I said, no, And she told the barber, said, "Don't you cut her hair." And he said, "Well, if she tells me to cut it, I'll have to cut it." And he looked at me and I said, "Cut it." And so he cut it. And I tell you, that was really something, because I didn't have any time or anywhere to go and have my hair washed and set and fixed. And I went back to the store and my hair was all over my head. And I got me bobby pins and I tried to hold it down because I had to work all afternoon. And I sure was conscious of it, and then went to the party that night, and that was something. But I've never been sorry I had my hair cut.
Okay, well, Hazel, you've done a lot of interesting things, and I've often described you as a career woman, a real now woman, back in a time when most women stayed at home with their children. If you had any words of wisdom or advice to give to all of your nieces and nephews and relatives, what would it be?
Gee, I don't know. Rita asked me if I had any words of advice for the young people now. The only thing I can really say is not to be afraid to, if you have a good idea, to do it, and don't be afraid of work, because it's hard work. But it's also a lot of fun and a lot of satisfaction. So if you feel like doing something that's good and worthwhile, do it.
Thank you so much for the interview. We appreciate that, and we'll certainly cherish all these memories you've given us and all the words of wisdom that you've shared with us. Thank you. Now we have Viola with us again. She realized that when she was telling her history that she sort of rushed through some aspects of her life and left out a few things that she would like to include. So now we're going to turn the time back over to her for some more information she'd like to share with us. Okay, Viola?
I've forgotten where I left off. Anyway, I guess it was with the last baby that I had, and that was Amelia. She was a cute baby. She was just as cute as she could be. I took her to a party that we had with France Neckwear, and everybody fell in love with her. She looked like a little dark-skinned Indian almost. She was so brown. Anyway, she stayed home and stayed with babysitters while I worked. One babysitter was Myrna Henderson, and I remember Myrna running short on groceries just about all the time, and she fed her mustard and sugar sandwiches. So she had a pretty rough upbringing, but anyway, we got them through school and on the way, and hoped that they've done well. We did in later years. I guess after Amelia was married and had Felicia, she had gone on a binge or something and wasn't staying at home, so we decided that we would adopt Felicia because we were raising her anyway. And this was one of the happiest times of my life, I think. Felicia was just a joy to us, I guess, in our later years. So we felt like she was a little doll baby maybe, and tried to do everything for her. She took dancing, and she took a lot of interest in things at church. But anyway, she's been a real joy. I think she was around 8 years old when we adopted her. But she stayed with us until her and Steve got married. And then this was almost a parting of the ways with all of them. But we've enjoyed our children. We've enjoyed them very well. They have excelled. Jim has a good position, and Susie's done well, and they're all just good, strong children. And I can't ask anything more of them than to live and do well and have their calling in the church if it stands reasonable for. This is what my biggest prayer is, that they will come back to the church, because all of them were baptized and they need to join back with the family in church services. This is all I can think of right now.
Well, we'd like to thank you also for sharing all those wonderful memories with us. And here's our parting picture of Aunt Hazel.
Wait a minute.
Okay, Aunt Hazel remembered something.
She always does.
All of this, I didn't even mention James.
Okay.
While I was in the temple, I met James, and his wife had died a couple of years before that, and so he was working in the temple, and I was working in the temple, and so we decided to get married, and I've enjoyed it very much, meeting all of his family, because he has very special members in his family, and they've been very good and kind to me, and I have enjoyed that very much. And he didn't live too long after we married, about 8 years I think it was, and he passed away. But the children still keep up with, send me Christmas presents and come to see me now and then. They all live in different places, but I've enjoyed their love and friendship very much. That's about all I can remember about him, but I hated not to say something about him too, because my name is Wyrick.
Thank you, Hazel. Well, this is just our little Christmas offering from Hazel and Grandma to you, to give to you some of the memories of their lives. And there's no way that we could give you the memories of 87 years of Hazel and 84 years of Grandma in just a few minutes of tape. But they've tried to hit a few highlights and hope that you will enjoy these memories and cherish them in years to come, just much as we have cherished these two sisters. Merry Christmas from all of us. Bye-bye. As we say goodbye to our two sweet sisters, we're making a picture now of their RV. And Hazel told you all about the circumstances leading up to their being in this RV. So they're here now, living at Coville's Paradise Point. Enjoy the beautiful spring and fall days, watching the boats and hearing the birds and looking at all the different animals out on the water. So again, we say goodbye and say how much we love you. Bye-bye.